Welcome back to Men and Motors, and today you join me with the Porsche Taycan Sport Turismo. And I have to say, at a first look, this car is rather pretty. It has some gorgeous lines, especially these two little humps in the roof, and I'll show you the rear quarter shortly because I think it's absolutely stunning. Now, a lot of the Porsche fanatics won't even give this car a look in because it simply doesn't have that lovely scream of a flat six, but what it does have is power and torque and practicality, which is something that a 911 doesn't have. It might have the power and torque, but it certainly doesn't have practicality, and that's exactly what this is. And it is also a cheap Porsche to run. It's not going to cost you a fortune in petrol every 2 minutes. So we'll get into it and let's have a look at what actually powers it, which would normally mean I'd lift the bonnet to show you the engine, but there just simply isn't one. It is all battery. And that's another thing with this Porsche. You actually get a boot space, whereas with normal 911s and Boxsters and the Caymans, you don't get any boot space, you just get a frunk. So we'll move round to the back and we'll talk about the granddad statistic. Now, like most EVs, this car does actually come with a frunk, which is 84 litres. It's more than ample storage, but it should come as no surprise because, like most of Porsche's rear engine models, you have always ended up with boot space in the front. But where practicality really comes as a surprise with this car is in the back. Now, in the back, you get a powered tailgate, which greets you by this massive boot space for a Porsche, which is 446 litres. You even got a little compartment here to store your charging cables, and it is quite deep into the floor, so you could probably fit a few more things in there rather than just the cables. And this is why I think this car is really practical, because it has the speed and the power, but it also has the space for you to fill it with luggage. And whilst we're talking about the back end, I really want to give you a moment to appreciate this rear quarter. When you look down this side, it is so fat and curvaceous. It is a really wide, low-standing car. And with this swooped roofline that curves down and cuts off short, I really do think it's a pretty looking thing. Whilst we're on the subject of practicality, I should probably tell you about this. Now, this is the charging port for the Taycan. And one thing I like about this is you can actually charge the car from both sides. There's a plug-in point on both sides to plug it in when you want to charge it. The only little niggle with this is if you want to charge it DC, which ultimately means charging at a rapid charger, you can only do that from the passenger side. I'm not sure why that is, and I don't know why they couldn't have put another outlet here to allow you to do that, but I can't complain because a lot of EVs you can only charge from one point on the car, and this is brilliant should you be in a tight parking space or you've got peace of mind. You can just drive into the bay and no matter which side the plug is on, you can plug it into the car. So kudos for that. Now, this particular model has had the 20-inch turbo aero wheel specs, which cost around 1,600 quid. And for 20 inches, I do have to say they look rather massive. And the other thing that's massive about them is the sidewall on these beautiful Michelin tyres. Now, I do have to give credit to Michelin here because there is nobody making a better looking sidewall of a tyre than these guys. And this car really pulls it off well, having these wheels. I'd like to point out as well, you do get a nice little glimpse of the Porsche calipers that are painted black through the gaps in the wheels. You can really tell they've gone for an aerodynamic design here to try and boost range on the car, but also pull off that Porsche look. When you get inside the car, you're greeted by this lovely Porsche steering wheel, and it feels absolutely fantastic. Very solid, little flex, and it grips your hands lovely, and it is very nice for a round steering wheel. The most common thing nowadays is for flat bottoms, but Porsche have never gone down that route, and I think this steering wheel is one of the prettiest on the market in the automotive world. Now, as far as premium finishes go, on the door cards and on the center console, I wouldn't say it's the most premium finish, but it certainly isn't cheap. Obviously, Porsche have tried to put all the money into the technology of this car and how it drives, so somewhere there has to be a bit of compromise. Now, in the front, you get two cup holders here and you get a cubby here. Now, the cubby here is rather frustrating, I'm not going to lie, because it's a weird shape, so you have to reach your arm around and in, and if you let go, it just closes on you. It doesn't prop up, which is a little niggle, a little gripe, something that I could live with, maybe. Something that I could change? Yes, I'd want to change it if I could. In the cubby, you get two USB-C ports and you get a 12-volt outlet, and you also get a wireless charger with like a little strap to stop your phone falling down. We've got two cup holders and then this lovely like iPad screen on the dashboard, and here you can control the climate control, the heated seats, you can open the boot, you can check the charge status of the battery. But there is one thing about the climate control, and it is quite frustrating, I'm not going to lie. The actual vents that blow the air, you can't just move them manually. You have to do it on the touchscreen, which again is very futuristic and looks rather cool, but it can be quite irritating when you're driving down the road and you're trying to change it, because obviously the vibration of the road, you're moving up and down. Touchscreens are a bit awkward to operate. I fully appreciate why Porsche have done that, because it's forward thinking, it's in the future, but I would like to see that phased out on the newer models if that's something they're going to bring out. I'm not the first person to say that, and I won't be the last person to say that. There is a lot of people that have really slated that. I'm not going to slate it too much. It is an observation that could be made better, but I also fully appreciate why Porsche have done it. Now on the screen in front of you, you've got your maps, your speed, your drive mode, your media, your phone calls, everything else up there in front of you. And I do have to say, the satellite navigation and the maps on this car are absolutely stunning. They use Google Satellite View and it looks so crisp and it looks really smart when you're driving down the road. And the way it keeps up and up to date, there's zero lag when you drive in. It's very live view, very quick, and it just looks really premium. The screen down here below, it's nice that they've actually put some haptic feedback on there. So when you press it, you do get a nice little vibration in your finger just to assure you that you've pressed the button. Because like I say, touchscreens are irritating whilst you're driving. We've got electric seats, driver's side and passenger. We've also got a drive select mode here where you can spin this little dial and it'll change the mode you're driving. Voice control, and it does actually work, and it also works when you do this. Hey Porsche, how can I help you? It's popped up on the dashboard. I ask it something to do and then it'll just do its thing. We've also got the Sport Chrono specs on this car, and again I just think that is a pretty looking thing, and it always finishes the dashboard off on a Porsche. The seats are really hugging. They're similar to a 911 design seat, very nice to wrap around your sides, very comfortable. I drove around 250 miles in this the other day and I just got out ache and pain free. Very comfortable car, visibility is great, and all in all it's a nice place to sit and a nice place to be. Now when you get into the back of this car, you do feel very comfortable. The seats grip you and hug you, and it does have that sporty feel. There's plenty of foot room. Knee room can be a little bit compromised depending on how far the passenger in front of you is sat back. Seats, nice finish, lovely leather, smells amazing. And you also get this armrest here with two cup holders in, nothing too fancy. There is two USB-C ports here underneath the middle seat. You've also got climate controls here, but basically you can just turn them on or off. They do look quite dated, I'm not going to lie, but is it a down point? Not really. Now this middle seat is an option, but it is rather pointless. If I try and get into that position now, as you can see, it's quite difficult. Your knees are having to be tucked between them seats and my head is hitting the ceiling. There is no way I could go on a long journey and remain comfortable in that seat. It is perfect for 4 people, but I think for 5 it's just not comfortable. You might do it down the road if you're dropping your mates off at the pub, but I wouldn't like to go on a long journey sat there. All in all, I can't complain. The headroom's good, very sporty feel, and it is a comfortable car to ride in the back in. So with that said, I think we should take it out on the road and see how it drives. Now when driving this car, the first thing you notice is it's rather weird driving a Porsche without a screeny engine or just a bellowing exhaust from the rear. With that said though, it does have a rather nice whirring noise, and you hear it more when you do put your foot down. The feel in the steering is very similar to a 911. The only thing that doesn't tend to happen is when you put your foot down, the steering doesn't get lighter with the lift of the car, because this thing is rather heavy. One thing I have noticed in this car, and especially when I'm comparing it to other EVs, is you don't get any flappy paddles on the steering wheel. The flappy paddles in most EVs are there to control the regenerative braking, and on this car it all seems to be automatic. There's no way you can increase or decrease the resistance on the motors to make the battery charge more. And the other thing I've noticed on the back of that is it does hold its speed well. In other EVs you can one pedal drive as such, where you let off the accelerator and with the amount of resistance on the regen the car will slowly come to a stop. But with this, it carries its speed forward. There is no resistance there, and it does maintain the speed well, which made me wonder when I was driving it on the motorway, am I going to lose a lot of range and am I going to lose a lot of mileage? Well, that wasn't the case. So the technology behind how the regen works on this car, it's alien, because it does it all itself. There tends to be a bit of a stigma with EVs that if they say the 300-mile range, you're lucky if you get 250. Now this car does boast a 3-mile range, but like I say, I had 260 out of it, which I think is good. And I wasn't driving it very soft, I was driving it quite harsh. Not anything bad, but you know, just I was driving it how a Porsche should be driven. So if I just flick the drive mode now into Sport Plus, everything seems to go a bit more aggressive. Now you do have a battery boost button on the steering wheel, and that's where the horsepower numbers slightly change. When you do read the spec of this car, it has around 320 horsepower, but with the battery boost it goes up to around 408. And if I just plant it does pull ridiculous. It is quick, this car. It's just strange to not have that that sort of loud flat six screaming at you that a Porsche should have. Just the way it accelerates, it's so harsh. Now you can get these with more horsepower. I think the Taycan Turbo or some of the higher range ones, they have around 700 horsepower, which is nearly double what this has. But this is fast enough. I don't think you need much more than this. Even if there's that person irritating you on the motorway and they're just hogging the middle lane, you've only got to just flick the accelerator and you pass them. It's the way it picks up speed is just uncanny. It's not, I've never really experienced a car pick up speed like that. And it is really fun to drive. That's one thing I would say that most EVs lack. They're not really fun to drive. The acceleration's great, and then after 5 minutes you're bored and you've sort of had enough. But with this, I'll tell you what, it pulls. And it is fun, and it's quite a laughable car. I should also add as well, the sound system in this car's got a rather lovely punch to it, and it's enough for you to, you know, really vibe out to your tunes. It does have ambient lighting specs on this car, and you can't really see it in the day, but everything lights up nice all down the door cards, especially around the cup holders here. It glows and you can change the colours. You can't really mix the colours as such. There's an option of around 10, but it's enough, and it does look nice and pretty at night, and especially with all these screens lit up, it does look very futuristic and very expensive. One thing that I should probably mention is when you buy a brand new Taycan, Porsche give you a charge card which is valid for 3 years. And what that means is you can actually charge up for a fixed price of 30p per kilowatt hour at any charger that is on their list. And it primarily uses Ionity, and it also uses Porsche's chargers at their dealerships, which I think is a great incentive to get you into an EV. I am aware that Tesla many years ago did offer free charging for the first 2 years of ownership, and I'm not too sure whether those grants still exist. But the one that Porsche offers, what is great about it is if you sell this car and you buy a used one and it's within that 3-year age limit, the card comes with the car, and you, the new owner, still gets it at 30p per kilowatt hour, which I think is great because it makes running an EV cheap. What people tend to overlook when driving EVs is the cost of actually using the rapid chargers. Currently in the UK, most rapid chargers are anything between 70p to 80p per kilowatt hour. Now, for instance, if you was to charge your car up, say from 5% to 80%, you'd be looking at roughly around 40 to 50 quid, which is quite expensive given that you might be charging it every 200 miles. So when you work it out, 40 quid per 200 miles, what's the maths on that? About 20p a mile. It isn't that much cheaper than running a well-efficient diesel car. But the perk side of it is, with obviously an EV, you have the power to do this and accelerate just monumentally fast. The way these cars just pick up power is second to none. And I don't think any internal combustion engine is ever going to be able to deliver the power the way these electric cars do. Now, given that this is only the two-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive model, you would think there'd be a bit of slippage from the back wheels, and there really isn't. I'm in Sport Plus mode now, and all you do is just squeeze the accelerator, and there is nothing. Even from a standing start, there is no squabble, there's no skitting around on the road, it just pulls and delivers the power well. I can't take my focus away from this car being great. There is a lot of EVs that I have drove where they claim a real high range mileage, and that just doesn't turn out to be true. In this model, I cannot complain. I've done 2 long journeys in this car now that have equated to around 250 to 260 miles, and I have done them on 1 charge. Albeit the battery was 100%, but I have done it on 1 charge. Now the reality is, if you weren't charging at home, you're probably going to be charging between 20 and 80%, so a 260 mile trip might be a bit difficult. But the great thing about the Porsche sat-nav is if you put a journey in, it will program a stop off for you to pull in, charge, and leave you with enough charge when you get to your destination. EVs, are they the future? I don't think they are at the moment. Are they the future if the infrastructure in the UK and in the world improves? Absolutely. The problem we have is I work in the electrical industry as my day job, and I know for a fact that the national grid in the UK does not have the capacity to incorporate everybody going electric with the cars. And with Mazda recently announcing that they're going to make the bare minimum of electric cars that they need to comply with the ZEV legislations, and they're going to put their focuses on petrol and diesel engines being the cleanest they can be, I think manufacturers are going to go more down that route. But to summarise on the Taycan and the way it drives, very comfortable car, it maintains its speed well, there isn't a lot of drag, the regen doesn't slow you down, it's automatic. But there's one added benefit that I do have to say about this Taycan, and especially in this instance now on the motorway, the range does not disappear fast like it does on other EVs that I have actually tried and tested. When I had the MG ZS, now I know that's not a comparable because that car's 30,000 and this one's 90,000, but the MG ZS follows a similar suit to all other EVs where the regen system is very forceful and you can change it on the flappy paddles. This one isn't, it's kind of automatic. The MG ZS on the motorway, I just couldn't do the mileage. I was charging it up at a rapid charger every single day and I was only doing around 120 miles a day. This car, like I say, I've been going to and from work with it, which is around 50 miles a day. I've been doing a couple of site visits, which has totted up the actual distance that I've been going with it. So I've been doing, say, roughly 100 miles a day in it, and I've only really had to charge it up every 3 days or so. So I can't complain. I really do think the Taycan is a good car, and I'm very excited to see the new model that they've just announced, because I believe it's over 1,000 horsepower, which is going to blow your mind, because this car is just savage in the way that it accelerates. It's so quick. Wow. I never thought an EV would make me smile this much, but this is laughable and it's fun. So there we have it, my brief review of the Porsche Taycan Sport Turismo. It really is a fun thing to drive. Let us know what you think in the comments. But in the meantime, click up here to see what Jim's been up to, and click down here to see some Men and Motors footage from many years ago. And with that said, I'll see you all very soon.